My husband and I come from the same background. The only difference is that his mother isn't of that ethnicity, so he wasn't raised in the culture like I was. When we started dating, I helped him reconnect with his roots. This eventually led to him reaching out to his estranged father's family and becoming close with them. I think my mother-in-law has sort of held that against me ever since. Throughout the course of our relationship, she has made multiple comments about how she doesn't like the amount of emphasis I put on my heritage. When we told her I was pregnant with twins, she later said something about not wanting her future grandchildren to care about that stuff like I do. I've learned to ignore her comments because trying to explain myself to her has never helped. And I try to avoid conflicts whenever I can. My husband and I decided that the babies would have a first name from our culture, and their middle name would be a typical American name. My parents did the same thing with my name too, so it was just a continuation of that tradition. My mother-in-law ended up seeing texts between me and my husband where we said the middle names. But she assumed that we were talking about first names, so she went out and got the babies matching sweaters, with the names printed on the front of them. She showed the sweaters to me after they arrived. And I thanked her for the gift but didn't correct her on the fact that those were the middle names. I was sort of peeved that she had snooped through text messages to try to find out the names before we told her anyway. So I didn't want to give her their first ones on top of that. Last night when she was over at our house, she told me how relieved she was that we had chosen normal names for her grandchildren, and not a ridiculously difficult to pronounce name like mine. My husband asked what she was talking about. She repeated herself and he told her that actually, the babies did have names just like mine and he expected her to learn to say them. She brought up the text messages and the sweaters she bought, and then my husband explained our plan for their names. She got really pissed at me after that. Said I let her look like a fool for accepting the sweaters instead of telling her the actual names, which we still haven't shared with her, and that she'd be calling them by their middle names since that's what she knows them as now. My husband ended up asking her to leave. And after she was gone he said he wasn't upset at me or anything, but that he thinks I should have just told her she had the wrong info, instead of lying. My boyfriend and I have been together over a year and living together about 6 months. He's an extremely light sleeper. We never used to have problems, but I'm now on medicine that causes me to have more insomnia, so it's harder for me to fall asleep. Lately, we've gotten into fights because he's being absolutely unrealistic about any noise in general. I can't clear my throat quietly, sneeze or even yawn without him grumbling, groaning, or yelling at me at how loud I'm being. When I say yawn, I don't mean some exaggerated TV yawn, but literally the sound of me silently taking in and expelling air from my mouth 3-4x over the course of 2 hours sets him off. Sneezing is very rare and it's also quiet, but if I have to make any noise, I do it as silently as possible. But it's not enough for him. When I was extremely sick with the cold, he made me sleep on the couch because I was having a tough time sleeping without being able to actually blow my nose to breathe. But when he caught it a week later, I gladly let him sleep in the bed and helped take care of him when he woke up in the night because he wasn't feeling well. I've argued with him multiple times that it's unfair for him to expect absolute silence and be mad over the air he hears from a yawn, but he just shuts me down and tells me to be quiet because I've disturbed him from being right on the edge of sleep. I understand that when you're half asleep you're particularly grumpy, we've all been there. But it winds me all the way up that I already constantly have to cater to the way he needs tons of space. Meaning I have to sleep pencil straight all night or on the side not facing him if I want to move my legs at all. And then this sound thing. I've had previous BFs who were heavy sleepers that snored, made lots of noise, and honestly that bothered me less than constantly having to be alert to his needs. He says that earplugs don't work and he only likes to hear the fan, so white noise is out of the question. I don't want to go downstairs because then I'll just stay up, and I don't want to keep taking melatonin every night, but I'm this close to not renewing our lease together next year if things don't change. It also makes me feel like if we got married and had kids he'd just expect me to be up all the time dealing with the baby, so he can sleep, or complaining about his sleep, or if one of us was to have a chronic sickness that we'd have to sleep in different bedrooms, because of how selfish he is. I have a lot of family members. I come from a religious community that doesn't believe in the public school system and tends to have a ton of kids. I have an older sister, Julia, a stepbrother, Ron, a stepsister, Molly, a half-brother, Joe, and a half-sister, Lucy. Growing up, all of us were homeschooled. This involved a lot of neglect, lack of textbooks or seasonally appropriate clothes / shoes, unheated house, and sometimes physical abuse. I lived mostly with my mom, but spent weekends with my step-family. Both houses were dysfunctional. My stepmom used to have a severe problem with alcoholism, although she's been better in the last few years. Ron is my best friend and I would be lost without him. We've supported each other through years of hard times. And we discuss a lot how our lives could have been different if we'd been sent to school or generally had a more healthy home life. Obviously, we don't want the same thing for our younger siblings. And don't want to see them struggling in minimum wage jobs while trying to study for a GED the way we're doing. When I went to visit him recently, I found that my stepmom had gone out of the country for an entire week and left the youngest two at the house. Ron and Molly both work. Molly hasn't been doing any homeschooling for about 2 years, and are out of the house for most of the day and night. I tried to help Lucy with her math homework, but she was extremely behind grade level and kept getting distracted because she had to make lunch or do chores. Joe spends all day in his room playing video games and gets no guidance from anyone. I tried to as gently as possible get him to do some reading, but he doesn't understand how serious the situation is, and obviously is having too much fun to care. So I called CPS and reported educational neglect. And obviously everyone knew it was me. And Ron told me that stepmom said I wasn't welcome at the house anymore and to never contact any of them again. Molly is extremely mad at me. She blocked me on Facebook and doesn't have a cell phone where I can reach her. Julia, who somehow heard about all this despite living across the country, also blocked me on Facebook and reported my Facebook as impersonating a celebrity. Facebook deleted it, generally making everything harder. This stings even more because I'm already estranged from my biomom over my religious beliefs. I now have no family members left, besides Ron, thank bejeebus, who want anything to do with me. I feel like I make enemies everywhere I go. Ron has been saying for years that he can't call CPS, and I guess this is why, but at least he doesn't blame me. He suggested that I try to talk to stepmom once some time has passed, but I would have no idea where to begin. Me and Sil, Daisy, have been friends since high school, 15 years ago. I started dating her brother, Dan, when we were all in college. Daisy married Matt sometime after I married Dan 10 years ago. Matt and Daisy wanted a baby and starting trying right after marriage, but they were having a lot of trouble. I am talking multiple failed IVFs, multiple late-term miscarriages, one of which was a stillbirth. The struggle went on for 7 years. I have helped her immensely through everything, financially and emotionally. Matt is unsympathetic sometimes. He behaves as if it's a batch of bad cookies and immediately guilts her into trying again. So, it always was up me and Dan to take care of her. Despite many talks from me and Dan, she remained married to him and kept trying again and again. We have had many offers to leave the state / country for a better job, but didn't because we were scared to leave her alone. 3 years ago, I got pregnant. We broke the news gently to Daisy one day. She got real quiet and then asked us to leave. Later, she sent me an email saying she doesn't want to see me or Dan anymore and that this is all too much. We tried to console her but didn't work, so gave her space. 2 weeks before I was supposed to give birth, Dan passed away in an accident. I don't have any family except for Dan and Daisy. Daisy refused to attend the funeral because she will have to see me the day before the funeral, and I called her and begged her to come. I didn't think that I would be able to go through that without her. She hung up on me and didn't attend the service. Soon after that, I gave birth and I decided to move to another state. I cut off all contact with Daisy and started fresh. Now, me and my daughter are very happy and we are enjoying a comfortable life. She attempted to contact me once I moved away, but I ignored her. 2 weeks ago, she called from an unknown number and said she desperately wanted to talk to me. Turns out she finally got pregnant, had a baby boy who passed away 5 days after being born in NICU. Matt is also leaving her and screwed her over because of the prenup. She is basically broke and homeless days after losing a child. I just said okay. She then asked, "Are you really not going to say anything? You are really not going to help?" I pretty much said, "I don't care about you. I don't care about your life. I don't care about Matt. I don't care that your baby died. Just leave me and my daughter alone." And then hung up. Since then she has been sending me multiple emails and VMs stating how awful I am and how heartless and how much Dan would be disappointed. I continue to just ignore everything. I am not going to have any sympathy or help her in any way.